Good evening, night owls. Thank you for joining me for another late-night history journey. It's truly a pleasure to have you here, relaxing with a bit of slow storytelling. Please make yourself comfortable. Feel free to let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. If you enjoy these nighttime journeys, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps me continue our quiet explorations together. Tonight, I invite you to settle in as we explore a surprisingly tender side of the Viking Age. Mead-hall matchmaking. Viking courtship tricks that actually worked, and more. We'll wander back through time to discover how fierce Norse warriors wooed their sweethearts, all in the golden glow of a mead hall's firelight. No rush, just let the day fade away as we step softly into the past. Before we begin, go ahead and dim the lights or turn on a gentle fan. Nestle into your blankets and let your eyes grow heavy. Tonight, we journey back to the year 892, to a snow-dusted village by a Nordic fjord. Inside a great timbered hall, torches and hearths flicker against wooden beams. The air is warm with the scent of wood smoke and spiced mead. Tonight, we explore how Viking lovers found each other and forged bonds in that world of long ago. As you listen, picture the cozy firelight dancing on rough-hewn walls, and imagine the soft murmur of distant laughter. Tonight's journey is about love and courtship in the Viking Age. Gentle tales from a normally harsh world. Relax, and let's begin. 1,000 years ago, in Norse lands, the mead hall was the heart of community life. Here, after days of sailing or farming, people gathered under one roof to feast and tell stories. Unlike many societies of the time, Viking men and women socialized freely at these gatherings. You can almost hear the buzz of cheerful voices. Families sit along banquet tables, laden with roast meat and ale. Men boast of their voyages and victories, while women chime in with witty remarks or share local news. Young singles mingle cautiously under the watchful eyes of elders. It's a public setting, but there are chances to steal glances at a potential match across the firelight. In these warm halls, friendships bloomed, and sometimes so did romance. This hall culture was the Viking equivalent of a community mixer. Imagine a lively holiday party, but lit by torches and echoed in Old Norse. People told riddles and recited poems as entertainment, giving the quick-witted a chance to impress. A clever riddle or a well-crafted tale could earn appreciative laughs, and maybe a few admiring looks from that special someone. Even in the Viking Age, a bit of humor went a long way. Historians still argue whether love matches were common or if marriage was mostly a family affair. But the sagas suggest that sparks did fly during these merry gatherings. As the night wears on, you notice a couple of youths locking eyes shyly in a corner of the hall. The stage is set for an old-fashioned Viking courtship, unfolding gently by the fire. Before any vows or weddings, though, Norse couples had to get to know each other, and first impressions were key. That brings us to some of the charming and sometimes quirky courtship tricks Viking men and women used to catch one another's attention. You might assume a Viking warrior fresh off a longship would be rough and wild. But personal grooming was actually a secret weapon in Viking courtship. In fact, Vikings were famously cleaner than many of their European contemporaries. Archaeologists frequently find combs, tweezers, and even ear-cleaning tools in Viking graves. Clear evidence that Norse men and women took pride in a neat appearance. Bathing at least once a week was common. One English monk, grumbling about how these Norse newcomers charmed the local ladies, complained that Viking men combed their hair daily and bathed every Saturday, laying siege to the virtue of married women and their clean habits and fine clothes. That annoyed monk might be exaggerating for effect, but there's a kernel of truth. Cleanliness and a bit of style gave Vikings an edge in the dating scene. It turns out smelling like pine soap instead of sweat and seawater was the medieval equivalent of putting on cologne. So, picture a young Viking man before a feast, carefully braiding his freshly washed hair, maybe even bleaching it to a fashionable golden hue with strong soap, a trend noted by observers in the East. He chooses his nicest tunic, perhaps traded from afar, and hangs an ornate pendant around his neck. Meanwhile, a young woman might don her best linen dress and brooches, with her hair washed and scented with herbs. In a world lit only by fire and lamplight, such small touches did not go unnoticed. A clean face, a well-groomed beard, a flash of jewelry in the glow. These were subtle signals of desirability. Vikings even had a literal way of saying, "I'm into you," that might make you smile. One courtship custom involved gently striking your love interest in the face with a bouquet of flowers. Yes, a light, playful slap with purple blossoms was apparently a Viking flirting technique. We're not entirely sure why. Even historians scratch their heads, but some speculate it honored the goddess Freya, who was associated with love and flowers. Whatever the reason, you can imagine the scene. A burly young Norseman, perhaps a little nervous, gathering wildflowers and then softly brushing them against a girl's cheek. It's an endearingly tender gesture from a people we often think of as ferocious. A friendly floral face smack, Viking style. Women had their own ways to show interest as well. One charming tradition held that if a woman fancied a man, she would quietly sew him a shirt as a token of affection. In an age when every garment was handmade, a shirt was a very personal gift. It signaled care, skill, and the hope of closeness. After all, he'd be wearing something made with her own hands. Imagine a young warrior receiving a finely stitched linen shirt from a maiden at a feast. He would understand it meant she liked him. It was a sweet, practical gesture, and one likely appreciated during cold Nordic winters. Just as today one might cook a favorite meal for someone special, back then a woman's deft needlework could quietly speak volumes about her feelings. These little courtship rituals, bathing and grooming, exchanging flowers or handmade gifts, set the stage. In the communal glow of the mead hall, a Viking couple's journey might begin with something as simple as a clean-scrubbed smile or a freshly sewn shirt. But winning a partner's heart often took more than just appearances or tokens. It was time to prove sincerity through words and deeds. Viking suitors knew that charm and eloquence could be as alluring as physical appearance. The Norse were great storytellers and poets, and they didn't set those skills aside when it came to love. In fact, one old Nordic advice poem offers this guidance to would-be wooers. If you want to win a good woman, speak cheerfully to her. Make promises to her, and keep your promises. You'll never regret winning such a prize. These lines from the Havamal, the sayings of Odin, show that honesty and good humor were valued traits in courting. You can picture a young man in the hall, smiling and complimenting his beloved with genuine warmth, and following through on any oaths he swears to her. Vikings placed great weight on keeping one's word. A promise broken could ruin a reputation. So, courtship came with a serious expectation. Mean what you say, and say it kindly. We also know that poetry was used to woo the heart's desire, though carefully. Composing a love poem for someone was considered a grand romantic gesture, but in Viking society it carried a risk. Believe it or not, writing love verses to a woman who wasn't your wife was actually illegal in medieval Iceland. The lawmakers feared that poetic words held magic. A clever poem might bewitch a woman and tempt her away, or so the thinking went. A professional poet or skald who publicly praised a maiden's beauty could even be outlawed or killed for it. Because of this, any amorous verses were usually whispered in secret or sung softly where no one else could hear. Imagine two young lovers huddled close by the hearth's edge. The din of the feast behind them as the suitor murmurs a few heartfelt lines of verse just for her ears. It's a tender image, poetry spoken in the shadows, far from prying eyes. For those truly desperate in love, there was yet another option, a little magic. The Viking Age believed in spells and runes, and love was no exception. Old sagas and poems make the occasional mention of love spells, carvings of secret runes on wood or bone, meant to captivate someone's affection. Odin himself, the chief god, boasts in legend of knowing charms to win any woman's heart. There are whispers of young men carving runic letters on a girl's drinking horn, or slipping a talisman under her pillow. Did these mystical tricks actually happen often? We can't be sure, but it's a testament to how deeply Vikings valued love that they might call on a touch of sorcery to secure it. Even in a world of axes and sails, the heart had its own kind of power, one that warriors approached with both boldness and a bit of fear. Not every courtship was smooth, of course. Just like today, some flirtations fizzled, and some grand passions were unrequited. The sagas are full of longing glances that never blossomed, and jealous rivalries over a beloved's favour. Even Odin, in one tale, fails to win the woman of his dreams. Her family chases him off with weapons, and even stations a fierce dog by her bed to guard her. The All-Father himself slunk away, lovelorn and embarrassed, musing that she was the love of my heart, but she brought me only shame. It seems that when it came to affairs of the heart, even a god could stumble. This little story, told with a rueful smile, served as a caution. In love, there are no guarantees, not even for a Viking deity. Sooner or later, a Viking courtship had to involve more than just the couple. In a close-knit society, marriage was as much a bond between families as between individuals. After the laughter and flirting in the mead-hall came the more formal step: negotiations. If a man wished to marry a woman, the proper course was to speak with her family, typically her father or guardian, and offer a bride price. This was a sum of valuables: land, silver, fine weapons, or armor, perhaps, paid by the groom's family to the bride's. It wasn't so much buying a wife as it was honoring her family and proving he could support her. The bride's family, in turn, would provide a dowry of goods to help the new couple start their household. Marriage, in this sense, was a contract. But that doesn't mean love had no place in it. Remarkably for the era, the Viking bride usually had to agree to the match. Many cultures of the early Middle Ages treated daughters as passive participants in arranged marriages. But in Norse society, a woman's consent carried legal weight. Saga literature and even law codes hint that a young woman could veto an unwelcome suitor, at least in theory. Still, any wise Viking suitor knew to tread carefully. An unwritten rule of the time was that the less a potential groom saw of his intended bride before formal betrothal negotiations, the better his chances of staying alive. In other words, sneaking around courting someone's daughter in private could quickly provoke a protective father or brother. If a couple truly fell in love against their family's wishes, they had to meet in secret. The sagas call this the illicit love visit. Picture a young man creeping up to a farmstead at night to tap on his beloved's window shutter. These rendezvous did occur. The stories are quite clear that many lovers did enjoy each other's company in secret, but they were risky. If caught, the consequences could be dire. A furious family member might challenge the boy to a duel, or worse. A touch of grim comedy in these tales. More than one hot-blooded Viking lad clearly learned that courting a woman without her father's permission was a good way to get acquainted with the sharp end of an axe. Don't worry, we'll spare the gory details at this late hour. For most, the safer path was patience and propriety. A suitor would publicly state his intent and offer generous terms to the bride's family. If all parties agreed, the betrothal was settled by shaking hands or making an oath before witnesses. Once betrothed, the couple still might not spend much time alone. They had to wait until the wedding. But at least they knew that day would come. Interestingly, if things didn't work out, Viking society was relatively forgiving. Both men and women could end an engagement or even divorce after marriage, a fairly progressive idea for its time. A woman seeking to break off a marriage could reclaim her dowry and was free to remarry later. One Icelandic law even allowed a wife to divorce her husband simply by calling witnesses to their home and declaring herself divorced on the spot. All these negotiations and formalities built up to the big day, the wedding itself. And if you've been getting sleepy, fret not. A Viking wedding was as cozy and story-rich as you can imagine. Let's stroll through what happened when two Norse sweethearts finally tied the knot. Finally, the village gathers for a joyful celebration, the wedding feast. Viking weddings traditionally took place on Friday, the day sacred to Frigg, goddess of love and marriage. By late afternoon, people assemble at the local hall, dressed in their finery. The bride might wear a flowing gown and a bridal crown of silver, or perhaps a garland of wild flowers. The groom dons his best cloak and sword. As they stand before a respected elder or gothy, that is, priest or chieftain, bride and groom exchange rings and solemn vows, much as couples do today. Family and friends crowd around, smiling and wiping a few tears. When the officiant declares the marriage sealed, cheers echo off the rafters. Now comes a bit of Viking fun. The brudloop, or bridal race. In this light-hearted tradition, the bride's party and groom's party race each other to the feasting hall. Imagine an excited, laughing crowd dashing across a field or courtyard towards the doors of the mead hall. The only catch? Whichever side arrives last has to serve ale to the winners. It's all in good spirits, a friendly competition to kick off the feast. Of course, the groom makes sure to escort his new wife over the threshold when they arrive. Many cultures believe doorways are magical, sometimes tricky places, so he carries or leads her to ensure she crosses safely into their new life together. Inside, the fires crackle and benches are set for a grand meal. During the wedding feast, one curious ritual takes center stage. The groom takes a sword, a brand new blade gifted to him by the bride, and strides to the hall's main pillar. With a hearty swing, he drives the sword into the wooden pillar as deeply as he can. All the guests hush for a moment, measuring the cut. The deeper the blade bites into the wood, the stronger the marriage is foretold to be. It's a bit of playful fortune-telling. As night falls, the feast carries on with laughter, toasts, and endless platters of food. When at last the eating is done, the newlyweds are led to their prepared bed by 8 torch-bearing witnesses. This might sound intrusive to us, but it was meant to ensure the couple's union was properly inaugurated and blessed. The onlookers then politely withdraw. The groom gently removes the bride's gown or wreath, a symbolic deflowering ritual done tenderly before their privacy begins. There's one more important detail before we tiptoe away: the bridal cup. At the height of the celebration, the bride and groom share a special cup of mead, or honey wine, together. The bridal ale, infused with extra honey for sweetness and fertility blessings, is brewed just for them. They drink deeply and toast the gods, often invoking Odin and Freya, asking for prosperity and love in their marriage. Their families have even prepared a month's supply of this honeyed brew for the couple to enjoy in the coming weeks. This sweet tradition is the origin of our modern word honeymoon, a moon's cycle of honey wine to start the union off right. By the time the newlyweds retire for the night, the idea is that love and luck have truly been sealed in sweetness. In the days and years after the wedding, a Viking husband and wife settled into their roles, but also often grew in love and understanding. The Norse did not always marry for love, yet it seems they often found love through marriage. There are sweet glimpses of affection in the sagas. A husband seating his wife in the place of honor next to him at a feast to show his esteem. A wife brushing her fingers through her husband's hair as he lays his head in her lap by the hearth. If he was especially proud or fond, a Viking man might even pull his wife onto his knee in front of everyone, giving her a kiss and a cuddle, regardless of who saw. Such open displays told the community, "This is my beloved partner." In a culture that also prized toughness, these little tendernesses speak volumes. As our journey through Viking courtship draws to a close, let yourself drift in the peaceful knowledge that even in an era of longboats and swords, love found a way. We've seen how a rugged people wove tenderness and humor into their traditions. From the moment two young people exchanged shy smiles over a mead-hall fire, to the day they stood together as one before kin and gods. Love in the Viking Age was by turns practical, passionate, and poetic. It grew in the glow of hearth fires, in whispered verses, and in the shared labor of daily life. In many ways, their world was harsher than ours, yet even amid the cold winters and stormy seas, they sought the simple warmth of companionship. Now the hall is quiet. The torches are guttering out, and a gentle darkness fills the space where laughter rang out hours before. You've traveled far and wide in time tonight, and there's no need to wander further. Rest here by the embers, with the assurance that stories of love echo across the centuries, soothing and constant. Feel free to let your eyes close, carrying with you the soft images of firelit feasts and tender smiles from a long-ago world. Thank you for keeping me company on this midnight voyage. Sweet dreams.